What's the point of you having two houses at your age, Dad? You're almost 80. You can barely take care of yourself, let alone manage properties in two different states. Jennifer screamed at me, her face contorted with rage, finger pointed accusingly at my chest. I sat there in my worn armchair, the same one I'd bought when her mother was still alive, feeling each of her words cut deeper than any physical pain I'd felt in my aging body. We should be the ones enjoying that beach house in Cape Cod. I have friends who actually want to live, not just sitting around waiting to die like you. She laughed cruelly, tossing her hair back. God, it's pathetic watching you shuffle around this big house all alone. You're just a burden now, a sad old man who doesn't know when to let go. I looked up at my daughter, barely recognizing the little girl I once carried on my shoulders along that very same Cape Cod shoreline. Her eyes were cold, calculating, nothing like the warm brown eyes she inherited from her mother. I searched her face for any trace of the sweet child she once was, but found nothing familiar there, just a stranger wearing my daughter's face. The gold necklace glittering at her throat looked expensive, too expensive for a kindergarten teacher's salary. Her designer purse carelessly tossed on my sofa probably cost more than I spent on groceries in 3 months. Where was all this money coming from? Behind her, a young man I'd never seen before stood awkwardly in the doorway of my Vermont home, car keys dangling from his fingers, clearly uncomfortable with the scene unfolding in front of him. "Jennifer, please lower your voice," I said quietly, my weathered hands trembling slightly on the armrests. "The neighbors will hear. I don't care who hears," she snapped back, slamming her hand down on the coffee table so hard that the framed photo of our family, taken before everything fell apart, toppled over. She didn't bother to set it right. "It's time we talked about reality. You're getting older every day. You're losing your mind. Last week you couldn't even remember where you parked at the grocery store." That had happened once in all these years, and she wouldn't let me forget it. Yes, I'd gotten confused in the parking lot after shopping. A kind young woman had helped me find my car. It was embarrassing, but it wasn't a sign of dementia like Jennifer kept implying. You need to start thinking about downsizing, about being practical, she continued, her voice suddenly shifting, becoming sickeningly sweet. "We're just concerned about you, Dad. What if you fall at the beach house with nobody around? What if something happens?" She glanced back at the young man. "Isn't that right, Tyler?" The man, Tyler, apparently nodded quickly. "Yeah, absolutely. Safety first, sir." I didn't know who this Tyler was. Not her husband, certainly. David had left 3 years ago, fed up with Jennifer's constant spending and partying. She'd had a string of boyfriends since then, each one younger than the last. This one looked barely out of college. The fake concern in her voice was the final straw. I'd been suspicious for months, ever since my old fishing buddy Jack called me after driving past my Cape Cod property last summer. "Saw quite the party at your place last weekend, Bob," he'd said. "Didn't know you were renting it out now. Looked like some kind of wild MTV spring break situation. Dozen cars in the driveway, music blasting until dawn. Police showed up twice." I hadn't been renting anything to anyone. After 45 years working as a civil engineer, building bridges across America that would last generations, I'd saved enough to buy 2 modest homes. My primary residence in Vermont, where Helen and I planned to grow old together, and a small beach house in Cape Cod, where we'd spend summers with our children and eventual grandchildren. After Helen died of cancer 8 years ago, I couldn't bear to part with either place. Each held memories of her that I couldn't put a price on. And then Michael, my son, my fishing buddy, my confidant, the one who'd held our family together after Helen's death, was taken from us too. Just 25 years old, driving home from his night shift at the hospital where he was completing his residency. A drunk driver crossed the center line. They said he died instantly. I pray that was true. The thought of him suffering alone on that dark road haunts me still. That was 3 years ago. Jennifer had changed after Michael's death. Where grief had hollowed me out, leaving me a shell of the man I once was, it seemed to harden Jennifer. She became sharp-edged, bitter, started staying out late, drinking too much. David left. She lost her teaching job. I tried to help, tried to reach her through the pain, but she pushed me away at every turn. "Jennifer," I said, my voice steadier than I expected, "why don't you tell me what this is really about?" Her expression flickered just for a moment before she doubled down. "I told you, it's about being realistic about your needs at your age." I slowly reached for the manila folder I'd placed on the side table before they arrived. "Is it? Or is it about the $89,000 you've made in the past 2 years renting out my beach house on Airbnb without my knowledge or permission?" The color drained from her face. Tyler suddenly found great interest in his phone. The silence in the room was deafening. I don't know what you're talking about," she stammered, but her voice had lost all its previous fire. I opened the folder and laid out the printouts. Dozens of Airbnb listings featuring my property, reviews praising Jennifer's lovely Cape Cod getaway, bank statements showing transfers to an account I'd never seen before, photos from social media showing Jennifer and various friends partying in my beach house, bottles of expensive champagne littering the countertops that Helen had selected so carefully, evidence of damages, a broken window, cigarette burns on the antique dining table, graffiti on the boathouse door. "Party at Jay's beach mansion this weekend," I read from a printed Instagram post. "No parents, no rules, BYOB, but plenty of party favors provided. Is that what you've been doing with my property, Jennifer? Throwing parties, doing drugs in the home your mother and I worked so hard to buy?" My old colleague's son worked in cybersecurity and had helped me gather everything after Jack's phone call sparked my suspicion. The evidence was damning, not just the Airbnb rentals, which were bad enough, but the documentation of how she'd spent the money. Credit card statements showing purchases at high-end clothing stores, bar tabs running into thousands of dollars, first-class flights to Miami, to Vegas, to Cancun. "You listed my home as your own," I said quietly. "You've been collecting rent for 2 years. You installed smart locks so you could manage it remotely. You even used the photos Helen took of the property before she died." Jennifer's face crumpled, not with shame but with defiance. "So what if I did? You're never there anymore. It was just sitting empty most of the year. Do you know how expensive it is to live these days? My friends all have nice things. They go on amazing trips. Why shouldn't I have that too?" "Because it's not yours to take," I said, my voice rising despite my efforts to stay calm. "That house isn't yours. That money isn't yours. You stole from me, Jennifer. Your own father." "Oh, please," she scoffed, rolling her eyes like a teenager instead of a woman of 32. "It's not stealing when you have more than enough. You're just being selfish and stubborn. Classic boomer mentality, hoarding everything while the rest of us struggle." "Struggle? You call this struggling?" I gestured to her designer outfit, the keys to her luxury car sitting on my coffee table. "I've seen your social media, Jennifer, the champagne brunches, the yacht parties, the weekend trips to the Hamptons, all while I thought you were barely making ends meet. I've been sending you money every month to help with rent. Was that a lie too?" Tyler coughed awkwardly. "I think I'll wait in the car," he muttered, backing toward the door. "No, stay," Jennifer commanded. "This won't take long." She turned back to me, her expression hardening. "You want to know why I did it? Fine. I did it because you owe me. After Mom died, you checked out. You were so wrapped up in your own grief that you barely noticed I existed. And then, when Michael died," her voice caught, the first genuine emotion I'd seen from her today, "you completely fell apart. It was always Michael this, Michael that. Your perfect son, the doctor, the saint. Well, I'm still here, Dad. I'm still alive. But that never seemed to matter to you." I felt a deep sadness wash over me. There was some truth in what she said. After Helen died, I had retreated into myself, and losing Michael had nearly destroyed me. Had I neglected Jennifer in my grief? Had I failed to see her pain because I was drowning in my own? But that didn't excuse what she'd done. "Jennifer," I said, closing the folder, "I want the keys to the beach house back. I want access to the Airbnb account so I can shut it down. And I want the money you've made from renting my property transferred to my account by the end of the week." She laughed, actually laughed in my face. "Or what? You'll sue your own daughter? The only family you have left? You wouldn't dare." I looked at her for a long moment, this stranger wearing my daughter's face. "No, I won't sue you. But I will be changing my will tomorrow morning. The beach house was meant to go to you after I passed. Now it will go to the Oceanside Conservation Trust, and this house," I gestured around my Vermont home, "will go to Michael's best friend Peter and his family. They've been checking on me weekly since your brother died. They invite me to Sunday dinner every month. They actually care if I live or die." Tyler finally spoke up again. "Jennifer, maybe we should—" "Shut up," she hissed at him before turning back to me. "You wouldn't do that. You're bluffing." I reached for my phone and called my attorney, putting it on speaker. "Hello, Richard. It's Robert Wilson. I need to schedule an appointment first thing tomorrow to make changes to my will and estate plan. Yes, it's urgent. Thank you." I hung up and met Jennifer's stunned gaze. "You have until the end of the week to return what you've taken and provide a full accounting. After that, the changes become permanent." The shock on her face shifted to fury. "You spiteful old man," she spat. "This is exactly why I took the money. You've never appreciated me, never valued me. It was always Mom, always Michael. I was just an afterthought." "That's not true," I said quietly. "I've always loved you, Jennifer, but love doesn't mean allowing you to steal from me, to disrespect me. Love doesn't mean letting you treat me like I'm nothing." "Fine," she said, snatching up her purse. "Keep your precious houses, keep your money. But don't expect to see me again. Don't expect any calls or visits. You'll die alone in one of these big empty houses, and I won't shed a single tear." The threat pierced my heart like a physical pain. Despite everything, she was my daughter, my last living connection to Helen, to our family as it once was. The thought of never seeing her again was almost unbearable. But I thought of Helen, of what she would say if she were here. She wouldn't want me to be manipulated. She wouldn't want our daughter to learn that dishonesty pays off. "That's your choice to make," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. "But think carefully, Jennifer. Is this really how you want things to end between us, with theft and lies and threats?" Something flickered in her eyes. Doubt, perhaps, or a glimmer of the daughter I used to know. "Your mother would be heartbroken," I added quietly. "And Michael would be so disappointed." Jennifer flinched as if I'd slapped her. Helen had been gone for 8 years, Michael for 3, but their memories were still powerful presences in our lives. Jennifer had been especially close to her mother, and despite the 7-year age gap between her and Michael, they had been inseparable as children. "Let's go, Tyler," she said, turning abruptly toward the door. "We're done here." Tyler hesitated, looking at me with something like sympathy in his eyes, before following Jennifer. The door slammed behind them, leaving me alone in the sudden silence of my home. I sat there for a long time. The evidence of my daughter's betrayal spread out before me on the coffee table. The house creaked and settled around me as darkness fell, but I didn't get up to turn on a light. The darkness suited my mood. I thought about Jennifer as a little girl, building sandcastles at the Cape Cod beach, her laughter carrying on the ocean breeze. I remembered teaching her to ride a bike, bandaging her scraped knees when she fell, watching with pride as she graduated college. The first in our family to do so. I thought about the day she was born, how Helen and I had marveled at her tiny, perfect fingers, her rosebud mouth. "She looks like an angel," Helen had whispered, and I'd agreed. Where had that little girl gone? What had happened to turn her into the angry, entitled woman who had stood in my living room today? Had her mother's death damaged her that deeply? Had Michael's loss broken something in her that couldn't be repaired? Or had I failed her somehow, been too distant, too focused on my own pain to see hers? I couldn't answer those questions. All I knew was that the bond between us, once so strong, so unbreakable, had been stretched to its breaking point today. Perhaps it had already snapped. The thought filled me with a loneliness so profound it felt like a physical weight on my chest. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept replaying the confrontation in my mind, thinking of all the things I should have said differently, should have done differently, not just today but over the years, since Helen died, since Michael was taken from us. Should I have pushed harder to keep Jennifer close? Should I have recognized the signs of her spiraling earlier? Could I have prevented this somehow? Around dawn, exhausted and heartsick, I made myself a cup of coffee and sat at the kitchen table where my family had once gathered for countless meals. The house felt too big now, too empty. Maybe Jennifer was right about one thing. I didn't need all this space. But the thought of selling either house felt like betraying Helen's memory somehow. We had chosen these homes together, planned our future in them. Letting them go seemed like letting her go all over again. 3 days passed with no word from Jennifer. I went through the motions of my daily routine, making meals I barely tasted, taking walks around the neighborhood, nodding hello to neighbors whose names I sometimes struggled to remember. I called Richard and had him prepare the changes to my will, but told him to hold off on finalizing anything until the weekend. Some small part of me still hoped Jennifer would come to her senses. On the 4th day, a Thursday, the doorbell rang. Around noon, my heart leapt, hoping it might be Jennifer, but when I opened the door, I found Tyler, Jennifer's young friend, standing awkwardly on my porch. "Mr. Wilson," he said, shifting his weight from foot to foot, "can I talk to you for a minute?" I hesitated, then stepped aside to let him in. "Jennifer's not here," I said, closing the door behind him. "I know," he replied. That's why I came. She doesn't know I'm here." I led him to the living room, gesturing for him to sit. He perched on the edge of the sofa, looking uncomfortable. "I don't actually know Jennifer that well," he blurted out. "We only met a few months ago at a club in Boston. She seemed like fun, you know, always buying drinks for everyone, talking about her beach house, her connections. I thought she was some kind of trust fund kid." I said nothing, waiting for him to continue. "I didn't know about any of this," he gestured vaguely around the room, presumably referring to the situation with the beach house. "Not until I overheard her on the phone with someone the other night. She was laughing about how she'd been renting out her old man's beach house for years, without him knowing, said she was making a fortune off it." He looked genuinely troubled. "I have parents too, you know. I could never do something like that to them. And then when we came here, the way she talked to you," he shook his head. "It wasn't right." "Why are you telling me this?" I asked. Tyler reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a flash drive. "I made copies of some stuff from her laptop. The Airbnb account details, her banking information, records of all the rentals and payments. I'm not sure if it's everything you need, but..." He placed the drive on the coffee table. "It might help." I stared at the small device. "You realize this is a betrayal of Jennifer's trust?" He nodded, looking miserable. "Yeah, but what she's doing to you is worse. My grandpa raised me after my dad split. If anyone ever treated him the way Jennifer treats you..." He trailed off, then stood up. "Anyway, I'm done with her after this. Just thought you should have that information." As he headed for the door, I called after him. "Tyler, thank you." He nodded once, then left. I sat, looking at the flash drive, for a long time before finally picking it up. It felt like I was crossing some kind of line, invading my daughter's privacy. But she had invaded mine first, had stolen from me, had lied to my face for years. I needed to know the full extent of what I was dealing with. I booted up my old laptop, the one Michael had insisted on buying for me so we could video chat while he was away at medical school, and inserted the drive. What I found was worse than I'd imagined. Jennifer hadn't just been renting the beach house occasionally. She had turned it into a full-time business operation, booking guests back-to-back throughout the peak season. The rates she charged were exorbitant, $500 a night, $750 on holidays. There were special packages, party weekends, that cost even more and promised privacy, luxury, and no questions asked. The financial records were equally disturbing. In total, she had made just over $89,000 from renting my property, and every cent had been spent on designer clothes, on expensive restaurants, on vacations, on jewelry. There were bar tabs showing hundreds of dollars spent in a single night. Hotel charges in Las Vegas, New York, Miami, first-class flights. Not a single dollar had been saved or invested. It was all gone. Most troubling of all were the messages from guests complaining about damage to the property. A broken window that had apparently never been properly repaired, water damage from an overflowing bathtub, a small fire in the kitchen that had scorched the cabinets. Jennifer had simply paid the minimum to cover these issues up, never addressing the underlying problems. My beautiful beach house, the one Helen had lovingly decorated and maintained, was being systematically destroyed. I felt physically ill as I scrolled through the evidence of my daughter's betrayal. This wasn't just about the money, though the sum was substantial. It was about the complete disregard for something I valued, something that held precious memories of her mother, of our family as it once was. It was about the lies, the manipulation, the sense that she saw me not as her father, but as a resource to be exploited. That evening I received an email from Jennifer. No greeting, no apology, just a terse message. I've transferred $10,000 to your account. That's all I can afford right now. I'll pay back the rest eventually. Eventually, as if she were doing me a favor by returning a fraction of what she had stolen from me, as if I should be grateful for this token gesture. There was no acknowledgement of the wrong she had done, no sign of genuine remorse, just the bare minimum to try to appease me, to prevent me from changing my will as I had threatened to do. It wasn't enough, not nearly enough. The next morning, I called Richard and told him to proceed with the changes to my will. Then I called a locksmith and arranged to have the locks changed at the beach house. I contacted the utility companies and made sure all the accounts were in my name only. I called my bank and set up alerts for any unusual activity on my accounts. I changed all my passwords with the help of Peter, Michael's friend, who came over specifically to assist me with this task. "Are you sure about this, Bob?" Peter asked as we finished securing my accounts. "Cutting Jennifer out of your will completely. It's a big step." I sighed, feeling every one of my 78 years. "I don't know what else to do, Peter. She stole from me. She lied to me. She showed no remorse when confronted. What kind of message would I be sending if I just let that go?" Peter nodded thoughtfully. He was a good man, had been Michael's roommate in college, and remained his closest friend until the end. Since Michael's death, Peter and his wife, Sarah, had become like family to me, checking in regularly, including me in their holiday celebrations, helping me navigate the increasingly digital world that sometimes left me feeling obsolete. "I get it," he said, "but she's still your daughter, still Helen's daughter, still Michael's sister. Family is complicated." "Yes," I agreed. "It is." The following weekend I drove to Cape Cod for the first time in nearly a year. I needed to see for myself what condition the beach house was in, needed to reclaim it somehow from the strangers who had been cycling through it at my daughter's invitation. The drive was long and tiring. My back ached by the time I pulled into the driveway, And for a moment, I wondered if Jennifer might be right about another thing. Maybe I was getting too old to maintain two properties. But as soon as I stepped out of the car and smelled the salt air, heard the distant crash of waves against the shore, I knew I could never give this place up willingly. It held too much of Helen, too much of Michael, too much of the family we had once been. The exterior of the house looked much the same. The weathered grey shingles, the blue shutters Helen had insisted on because they reminded her of the sky on a clear summer day, the porch swing where we had spent countless evenings watching the sunset. But as I unlocked the door with my new key, I braced myself for what I might find inside. It was worse than I had feared. The living room furniture had been rearranged to accommodate parties rather than family gatherings. The sofa where Michael used to stretch out for afternoon naps was pushed against a wall, stained with what looked like wine or liquor. Helen's antique coffee table was marred with cigarette burns and water rings. The dining room table, the one we'd spent a month's salary on when we first bought the house, the one around which we'd shared 2 decades of family meals, was scratched and damaged beyond repair. But it was our bedroom that broke my heart. Jennifer had converted it into what looked like a master suite for her Airbnb guests. Our personal items had been cleared out, replaced with generic decorations that could have been from any hotel room. The quilt Helen's mother had made for our 20th anniversary was gone. The photographs that had lined the dresser of our wedding day, of the children when they were small, of family vacations and milestone celebrations, had been removed. It was as if she had systematically erased any trace of us, of our history in this place. I sat down heavily on the edge of the bed, not our bed anymore, but some new one Jennifer had purchased for her guests, and for the first time since the confrontation with my daughter, I wept. For Helen, who would have been devastated to see what had become of our family. For Michael, whose life had been cut tragically short. For the little girl Jennifer had once been, and for the woman she had become. And for myself, an old man alone with the wreckage of a family that had once been whole and happy. I don't know how long I sat there, lost in grief. Eventually, I wiped my eyes, took a deep breath, and stood up. Self-pity wouldn't fix anything. I needed a plan. Over the next 3 days, I threw myself into reclaiming the beach house. I documented all the damage with photographs, making detailed notes of what would need to be repaired or replaced. I deep-cleaned every room, erasing the evidence of the strangers who had passed through this space. I went through closets and storage areas, searching for any personal items that Jennifer might have hidden away rather than discarded. In the back of the hall closet, I found a box. Inside were the photographs that had once adorned our bedroom, slightly crumpled but intact. The quilt Helen's mother had made was there too, stuffed carelessly inside a plastic garbage bag. Finding these treasures felt like recovering pieces of myself that had been lost. On the 3rd day, as I was clearing out the garage, I heard a car pull into the driveway. Through the window, I saw Jennifer's luxury sedan, the one I had helped her buy. 3 years ago, another act of generosity she had taken for granted. For a moment, I considered not answering, pretending I wasn't there, but that would only delay the inevitable confrontation. I stepped out of the garage just as she was approaching the front door, key in hand, a key that would no longer work, with the new locks. "Dad," she said, startled to see me. "What are you doing here?" "I could ask you the same thing," I replied. "This is my house after all." She had the grace to look slightly embarrassed. "I was just checking on things. Making sure the place was ready for your next paying guests," I asked. Her expression hardened. "I transferred money to your account, $10,000. Did you get it?" "I got it," I confirmed. "It's a start, but nowhere near what you owe, both financially and morally." Jennifer sighed dramatically, as if I were being unreasonable. "Look, Dad, I said I'll pay back the rest eventually. What more do you want from me? I want you to understand what you've done, I said. I want you to see the damage you've caused, not just to this house, but to our relationship, to your mother's memory, to your brother's legacy. Oh, here we go again, she said, rolling her eyes. Saint Michael, the perfect son who could do no wrong. Do you have any idea what it was like growing up in his shadow? Why can't you get straight A's like your brother? Michael never got detention. Michael's going to be a doctor. Her voice was bitter, resentful. Even after he died, it was still all about him. About him. Michael would have wanted this. Michael would have done that. What about what I want? What about what I need? I looked at my daughter, really looked at her, perhaps for the first time in years. Behind the anger, behind the entitlement, I saw pain, deep, unresolved pain, grief that had curdled into resentment, loss that had hardened into bitterness. Was she right? Had I constantly compared her to her brother? Had I failed to see her for herself, to appreciate her unique qualities and struggles? Jennifer, I said softly, I never meant to make you feel less valued than your brother. I have always loved you, both of you, with my whole heart. If I've made you feel otherwise, I am truly sorry. She seemed taken aback by my apology, as if she'd been prepared for an argument, but not for concession. For a moment, her defensive posture softened. But, I continued, that doesn't excuse what you've done. Look around you. I gestured to the house. Look at what's become of the place your mother loved so much, the home where you spent your childhood. Summers, is this really what you wanted? Jennifer glanced away, unwilling to face the evidence of her actions. I needed the money, she muttered. For what? I asked. Designer clothes, luxury vacations, parties with people who only like you for what you can buy them. Is any of that making you happy, Jennifer? Truly happy? She didn't answer. You can't use the Airbnb account anymore, I told her. I've changed the locks, updated all the utility accounts, and alerted the neighbors to call me directly if they see any unusual activity. The house is mine, and it will remain mine until I decide otherwise. So you're really going through with it, she demanded, cutting me out of your will, giving everything to Peter and his family. They're not even related to you. They've been more family to me these past 3 years than you have, I said simply. They check on me. They include me in their lives. They treat me with respect and dignity. Because they want your money, Jennifer spat. I shook my head sadly. No, Jennifer, that's what you want. They just want my company. She had no response to that. We stood in silence for a long moment, the gulf between us seeming wider than ever. Finally, I said, I haven't finalized the changes to my will yet. I wanted to see you first, to give you one more chance to make this right. Hope flickered across her face. What do you mean? I mean that I'm willing to work with you to repair our relationship, but it has to be on terms of mutual respect. No more lying, no more stealing, no more treating me like I'm a burden or an ATM. I'm your father, Jennifer, the only parent you have left. I deserve better than what you've given me these past few years. She looked away, but not before I saw, tears welling in her eyes. I don't know if I can be what you want me to be, she whispered. I don't want you to be anything other than yourself, I told her. But I do want you to be your best self, not this person who would steal from her own father, who would desecrate her mother's memory for profit. Jennifer wiped her eyes roughly with the back of her hand. So what now? Now, I said, you have a choice to make. You can continue down this path you're on, a path of dishonesty, of selfishness, of using people until they have nothing left to give you. Or you can choose to change, to make amends, to rebuild what's been broken. Jennifer stared at the ground, her shoulders slumped. When she finally spoke, her voice was barely audible. I don't know if I can change. I don't even know if I want to. Her honesty, painful as it was, felt like the first real thing she'd said to me in years. I understand, I said. Change is hard, maybe the hardest thing we ever do. But I believe you can if you want to. The little girl who used to build sandcastles on this beach, who used to bring me seashells and call them treasures, she's still in there somewhere. Jennifer looked up at me, tears streaking her makeup. I don't know how to be that person anymore, Dad. I don't know how to be anything but what I am now. Start small, I suggested. Start by making this right. Return the money you took. Help me repair the damage to the house. Spend time here as my daughter, not as a landlord renting out property that isn't hers. She was quiet for a long time, looking past me at the house, at the ocean beyond. I wondered what she was seeing, the party venue she'd turned it into, or the family home it had once been. The place where she'd celebrated her 16th birthday with a bonfire on the beach, where Michael had taught her to swim, where Helen had read stories aloud on rainy afternoons. I can't pay back all the money, she finally said. Most of it's gone, spent. I know, I replied, but you could start by using whatever you have left to repair some of the damage you've caused. The furniture that needs replacing, the walls that need repainting, the window that was never properly fixed. She nodded slowly. I could do that, and maybe I could help you clean up the rest of the house, make it like it was before. It wasn't quite an apology, but it was a step, a small one, but still. I'd like that, I said. We spent the rest of the day working side by side, beginning the process of restoring the beach house to what it had been. Jennifer was quieter than usual, more subdued. Once or twice I caught her pausing in her work, looking at an old photograph or touching one of Helen's decorative pieces with something like regret in her expression. As the sun began to set, we sat on the porch swing, the one place that remained, unchanged, and watched the sky turn from blue to orange to deep purple. Helen and I had spent countless evenings just like this. Michael had proposed to his girlfriend Sarah on this very swing, though they never got the chance to marry before the accident took him from us. I miss them, Jennifer said suddenly, breaking the silence. Mom, Michael, I miss who we were when they were here. I miss them too, I said. Every day. After they died, something broke in me, Dad. It was like if they could be taken away, then nothing was safe. Nothing was certain. So why bother caring about anything? Why bother trying to be good? I nodded, understanding all too well. Grief can distort us, twist us into shapes we no longer recognize. I think they'd be sad to see what's become of us, I said gently. Not just the house, us, our family. I know, she whispered. I know they would. We sat in silence for a while longer, the only sound the creaking of the swing and the distant crash of waves. I can't promise I'll change overnight, Jennifer finally said. I'm not even sure I know how to be different than I am now, but I'll try, Dad. I'll try to make this right. It wasn't everything I'd hoped for, but it was a beginning. Over the next several weeks, Jennifer and I established a tentative new rhythm. She came to the beach house every weekend, helping with repairs and restoration. She transferred what money she could spare, not nearly the full amount she'd taken, but enough to show some effort. Most importantly, she listened as I shared memories of this place, of Helen, of Michael, of our family as it had once been. Slowly, almost imperceptibly, I began to see glimpses of the daughter I remembered. Her laughter became more genuine, less brittle. She asked questions about her mother that she'd never been willing to discuss before. She sat with me one evening. As we looked through old photo albums, and for the first time since Michael's death, she spoke of him with fondness rather than resentment. Do you remember when he tried to teach me to drive stick shift in that old Volkswagen? She asked, pointing to a picture of Michael leaning against his first car. We ground the gears so badly you could hear us coming from a mile away. I laughed at the memory. He was so patient with you. Kept saying, it's fine, even as that poor car screamed in protest. He was always patient, she said softly, with everyone but himself. There were still difficult moments. Jennifer would sometimes slip back into old patterns, making excuses, deflecting responsibility, becoming defensive when I asked about her life away from the beach house. I learned she'd lost another job, that her financial situation was more precarious than she'd admitted. The designer clothes and luxury car had been financed largely by credit cards that were now maxed out. The boyfriend, Tyler, was long gone, apparently, having taken some of her jewelry with him when he left. But unlike before, she began to share these struggles with me instead of hiding them. And rather than just throwing money at the problem, as I might have done in the past, I tried to offer guidance to help her develop a plan to get back on her feet. I think I need to sell the car, she admitted one Sunday evening as we finished dinner at the beach house. It's too expensive to maintain, and the payments are killing me. That sounds like a sensible decision, I said, careful not to sound judgmental. What would you replace it with? Something used, something practical. She made a face. Not very glamorous, but neither is bankruptcy. Small steps, small changes, nothing dramatic or miraculous, just the slow, painstaking work of rebuilding trust, of finding our way back to each other through the fog of grief and resentment that had separated us for so long. 3 months after our confrontation, Jennifer called me on a Tuesday evening. Dad, can I come over? I need to talk to you about something. Her tone made me nervous. Of course. Is everything all right? Yes. No, I don't know. It's complicated. I'll explain when I see you. An hour later, she was sitting at my kitchen table, hands wrapped around a mug of tea, looking more vulnerable than I'd seen her in years. I've been offered a job, she said, teaching again, 3rd grade at a public school in Burlington. Jennifer, that's wonderful, I said, genuinely pleased. Teaching had once been her passion, before everything fell apart. When do you start? That's the complicated part. The position begins in 2 weeks. I'd need to move to Burlington. She looked up at me, uncertain. It's a good opportunity. The school has an excellent reputation. The salary isn't amazing, but it's steady, with benefits. I think I need this, Dad. A fresh start. A chance to be useful again. Then you should take it, I said without hesitation. But what about the beach house, the repairs, all the work we still need to do? I reached across the table and took her hand. The house can wait, your life can't. This sounds like exactly what you need right now. She squeezed my hand, tears in her eyes. I don't deserve your support. Not after everything I've done. You're my daughter, I said simply. I will always support you doing something positive with your life. 2 weeks later, I helped Jennifer move into a small apartment in Burlington. It was modest, nothing like the luxury she'd been pretending to afford, but it was clean and bright and within walking distance of her new school. As we carried in the last of her boxes, I noticed something on her bookshelf that made me pause. A framed photograph of our family, Helen, Michael, Jennifer, and me, taken at the beach house the summer before Helen got sick. We were all smiling, arms around each other, the ocean stretching out behind us. I found it when we were cleaning out the storage closet, Jennifer explained, noticing my gaze. I thought I should keep it where I can see it. To remember who we were, who we could be again in some new form. As I drove home that evening, I felt a lightness I hadn't experienced in years. Not happiness exactly. There was still too much loss, too much damage for simple happiness. But hope. Hope that Jennifer was finding her way back to herself. Hope that our relationship, while forever changed, might still hold meaning and connection. Hope that the legacy of our family wouldn't end with broken furniture and betrayed trust, but with healing, with growth, with love that endured despite everything. The beach house still needed work. The money Jennifer had taken was largely gone, spent on a lifestyle she'd been trying to maintain for reasons I was only beginning to understand. But none of that seemed as important as it once had. When I reached my Vermont home, I sat on the porch and watched the stars appear one by one in the darkening sky. I thought of Helen, of the life we'd built together, of the children we'd raised, of the love that had sustained us through good times and bad. I thought of Michael, his gentle spirit, his boundless compassion, the future he would never get to experience. And I thought of Jennifer, struggling but trying, damaged but not destroyed. We did our best, I whispered to the night sky, to Helen's memory, to the universe that had taken so much but also given so much. And we're not done yet. The next morning, I called Richard, my attorney. About those changes to my will, I said. I've been reconsidering. Oh, he responded, sounding unsurprised. He'd known me long enough to anticipate my shifts in thinking. I'd like to set up a trust, I explained. The beach house will still go to Jennifer eventually, but with conditions, a trust that will prevent her from selling it, ensuring it remains in the family for generations to come, a place where memories can continue to be made. I think that's wise, Richard said. And the Vermont property? I thought about it for a moment. Split between Jennifer and Peter's family. They've both been important parts of my life. They both deserve a place in my legacy. After hanging up, I went to my desk and began writing a letter to Jennifer, not about the will or the inheritance, but about my hopes for her, my belief in her capacity to heal and grow, my unconditional love, despite all that had happened between us. I wanted her to have these words, to hold on to them in moments of doubt or darkness, to know that whatever else changed, this never would. She was my daughter, and I would love her until my last breath. As I wrote, I felt Helen's presence beside me, as real and warm as if she were sitting in the chair next to mine. I felt Michael's spirit too, his kindness, his forgiveness, and I knew, with a certainty that transcended logic or reason, that we would be all right. Not the same as before, never that, but all right in a new way, a way that honored our losses without being defined by them, a way that allowed for healing, for redemption, for love that endures beyond betrayal, beyond grief, beyond time itself. Sometimes love means setting boundaries. Sometimes forgiveness comes with conditions, and sometimes the greatest gift we can give our children isn't what we leave them in our wills, but the lessons we teach them while we're still here to see them learn. The lesson that it's never too late to change, to make amends, to choose a better path. The lesson that family, though it may bend and strain and even break, can also be mended with patience, with honesty, with grace. As I sealed the letter to my daughter, I felt at peace for the first time in years. Whatever happened next, whether Jennifer continued on her path of healing or stumbled again along the way, I would face it with the same strength and resilience that had carried me through all the losses and challenges of my 78 years. Because that's what fathers do. We love, we forgive, we hope, we endure, even when it breaks our hearts, even when those we love hurt us deeply. We find a way forward, one day at a time, one step at a time, carrying the past with us, but not letting it dictate our future. And in that endurance, in that stubborn, persistent love, we find our redemption, all of us, together.